After a less than stellar end to the year by the Phoenix Suns, dropping in the first round to the Timberwolves, getting swept by a team that could not even make the finals, the Suns need to seriously reload if they want to be a threat in the Western Conference and potentially make a finals. And it's going to take a lot of work because right now the roster is not where it needs to be. You can't just expect to fire your coach and replace him with another championship coach who just won it the year after and just think that everything's going to be okay. Going from the 2020 championship coach to the 2021 championship coach is not going to change everything. This team needs a serious overhaul, at least in the foundations, because the major contracts are really locked up right now. You got 3 players on supermax deals, you got 2 players on pretty big contracts, and a few other guys that are tradable for the team. And the Suns, they gotta make some moves if they actually want something to happen, because if you stick with this current roster and just fill it out with veteran minimums, I can guarantee you right now they're getting swept by any team in the Western Conference. Like, any team in the Western Conference. Because there's just some major issues. So let's just start it off taking a look at the salary cap sheet. And if you're wondering why there's no film in this video, I'm quickly recording this video and moving on to my next video of filming it. That'll be released close to the draft, talking about the draft prospects that I mentioned in this video. And this video is also pre-recorded, so if anything happens between Friday the 21st and Sunday the 23rd, it's not going to be in this video about the Suns, so sorry about that. But anyways, here's the calorie sheet, the salary cap sheet with the 3 supermax contracts: Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen's extension kicking in, and Nasir Little on this pretty solid contract, David Roddy, with these team options that the Suns will choose to accept or decline in this offseason. I'm not sure yet. Drew Eubanks declined. He should not have a box here, but he just declined his contract. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I'll break it down on another slide, but these are the guys who are under contract right now. And this right here is not a championship rotation, any way you look at it. I mean, we're going to take a look at the biggest issues, but Yusuf Nurkic is a big issue, and just the lack of size right here. You got 3 dudes 6'5" and shorter. That's just not great, and KD should not be leaned upon as your best defensive player in the starting lineup, and these guys were completely unplayable in the playoffs, so you got to make some moves. In terms of the rest of the contracts on the roster, Eric Gordon, Josh Okogie, and Damian Lee are player options, while all of our 2-way players are restricted free agents. They can be signed to full contracts or to 2-way contracts. In my opinion, maybe we shouldn't be doing that with, either 2-way or full contracts for any of these players, in my opinion. But we'll see later in this offseason if any of these 3 players accept their player options. They're all making around a minimum contract. So a guy like Damian Lee, who might not get back onto an NBA team if he doesn't accept this offseason, might be picking that up. Or, we might see what happens with Eric Gordon or Josh Okogie. I'm not sure yet. They might be trying to get more money. And even if they don't, even if they end up declining, there's a chance they come back to the Suns simply because the Suns will be willing to give them a home. I think they would for both of those players. We also have some unrestricted free agents: Royce O'Neal, Bol, and then 3 guys the Suns won't be resigning: Thad Young, Isaiah Thomas, Drew Eubanks. Those guys aren't being brought back, but these 2 guys are more important in my opinion. Let's talk about team needs. The number 1 need for this team is absolutely a rim running center. They need to be someone who can be a vertical lob threat and provide vertical spacing, and they can also protect the rim. I think that's the number 1 need. I know people really talk about the point guard thing, and it's right down here at the bottom too, but the center position is, it's just such a huge issue for this team. Just having Yusuf Nurkic, the rotation was Nurkic, Eubanks, and we had to bring in Azubuike a lot during the season, and that was just awful, man. We had easily the worst center rotation in the league, and it was obvious from last offseason we are going to have the worst center rotation in the league. Like, even then, I was only talking about how Eubanks needs to show up and needs to be really good for the center rotation to be anything, and since that didn't happen, our team was awful. Just completely awful. Center rotation was completely unplayable, and yeah, we were going to get swept because of the center rotation. Like, simply put, you need to have better centers. I know people like talking about point guards, but center is way more important in my opinion. It needs to be the /1 priority of this offseason, and I really believe that's what the Suns need to be spending their first round pick on. Another priority should be finding like a 4/5 who can be switchable, can play the 5-man position and not get played off the court, and be able to switch onto guard sometimes and maybe shoot the 3 ball, maybe not. It's not a requirement. They also could use a big wing defender. I think all 3 of these things are more important than having a point guard. A big wing defender is just such a huge thing. We just have no one to match up against a guy like Anthony Edwards. Like, we're rotating between, sometimes Royce O'Neal, sometimes Book, sometimes Grayson Allen, and that's just not cutting it, man. You need to have a bigger defender who's at least 6'6", who's got a pretty long wingspan, who can hold up against the bigger wings. Like, we might be seeing LeBron in the playoffs again. Like, that's a scary threat. Kawhi Leonard. I don't know. The Western Conference is big, man. Like, Michael Porter Jr., I don't know. And the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, that guy, Luka Doncic, like, we just have no one who can hold against those type of guys. And we're going to get abused by basically any team we play because we don't have a big wing defender like that. So big wing defender who can also kind of keep up with guards and definitely needs to be able to shoot threes because they're probably going to be a starter for our team. Who that is exactly, I'm not really sure, because that's probably the best value player we're looking for this offseason is a player like this. Then finally, yes, I do think point guard should be a hole that the team fills, someone who can initiate plays and control the offense, try to reduce the amount of turnovers the team generates, and just help set up plays a little bit better. This team is so quick to just get out of their system, get out of their plays, and just run random isolations or random post-ups all the time. And you need a point guard who's actually going to hold them accountable because everyone else plays without the ball in their hands. And I think they could use another guy who can initiate and make good passes, play some good defense. Probably on the bigger side if you're going to be adding a point guard to any of those rotations with the smaller guards and Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Grayson Allen. So yeah, maybe a larger point guard, at least a good defensive point guard. And also, re-signing Royce O'Neal and Bol should be priorities. I think both of those guys are going to be valuable playoff rotation players. Royce O'Neal is working on a contract that's worth about $10 million per year. That's an insane cap hit, man. The Suns will have like $200 million in contracts locked down before even working on anything else, so we'll see what happens. I think Bol is also a solid addition. I don't think he's getting a big contract anywhere else this season, so maybe try to bring him back for one more year and see what you can do with him. The assets we have available to trade are Yusuf Nurkic, David Roddy. I forgot to list Nasir Little, but Nasir Little, pick 22 in the upcoming draft, which can only be traded after making the draft selection, and then some other future first round pick. I kind of just don't know what pick this is. I haven't been paying attention to a lot of things, including what later year assets the Suns have, and just the overall CBA of the NBA. I'm going to say some things about sign and trades later probably, and I just don't really know about it because I don't really know how the CBA works. I just know the Suns can't really do much because they're a second apron team and they get pretty much denied of any exceptions. And one of the things I saw is that Yusuf Nurkic and Nasir Little cannot be packaged together. They each have to be traded individually for one player or multiple players. They cannot be traded together. So just watch out for that. I don't think Roddy can be traded with them either. So it would have to be Nurkic plus a first round pick, or Nurkic plus 2 first round picks, or Nasir Little plus 2 first round picks. But it can't be Nurkic plus Little plus Roddy for someone. So yeah, that's going to be something interesting to monitor. I tried to keep the players I listed in terms of Suns might be targeting trade-wise to contracts that are less than Nurkic's contract or less than Nasir Little's contract explicitly, because those are the most available to trade for. Pick 22, I would really like the Suns to make this pick because the team is so old. They need young talent, they need a young infusion, and they could really use a big hitter pick at pick 22. You have to look at what the Mavericks did with bringing in Derek Lively. You have to look at the Nuggets with Christian Brown and players like Julian Strother, and I don't really know who else on that roster is going to be a long-term contributor, but they've taken a lot of swings to improve their roster. And yeah, you just got to realize that these late round picks are important. The NBA champion Boston Celtics, they took Peyton Pritchard late into the first round. That's been a pretty solid pick for them as well. So I'd like the Suns to make some draft picks this year. Please at least make this number 22 and then worry about two-way contracts. This team has no money. We can basically only sign players for the veteran minimum and two-way contracts. So that's all you're going to be seeing this offseason. All right, let's start taking a look, going from the top of the list to the bottom in terms of our needs. Some free agent centers. The number one free agency center available is Goga Bitadze. I'm not even sure he's going to sign for a minimum contract this offseason, but he is the best available center. The rest of these guys don't really come close, in my opinion. He's a nice rim protector. He can kind of move his feet. He rebounds, and should have been a big part of the Magic rotation during the playoffs. I think he just kind of fell out of it with Mo Wagner really hitting his stride. And yeah, Goga Bitadze, I expect to see him in free agency. He would be a nice pickup, but maybe not a starting caliber type guy. I'm not really sure any of these guys are starting caliber, which makes things all the more worrying. Really, the only starting caliber guy on this players that are currently in the league side of my graphic is Nick Richards. I think everyone else is like backup tier. JaVale McGee, I'm not really even sure if he's that good at this point. He might have kind of fallen off. Andre Drummond would be solid and pretty close to startings here. The rest of these guys would all be swings. Mason Plumlee, Mo Bamba, Jackson Hayes, Luke Cornett. For trade targets, Nick Richards would be huge, and Charles Bassey is kind of like a backup look. You know, if you're able to convince the Spurs to hand him over to you guys, I would definitely be looking at Charles Bassey. I think he's gonna get thrown out from the Spurs with all their young talent they've been, you know, they're acquiring. They're probably gonna bring in another center during this offseason. In terms of centers they can bring in through the draft, De'Ron Holmes, I mean, that man has to be the number one option. Yves Missy and Zach Edey are two other potential swings that the Suns could add. These are the three guys I'm going to be making a video about, so expect to see that video before the draft, maybe the day before it. So keep your eye out Wednesday before the draft. We'll be talking about these three in full detail, but I truly believe if the Suns are drafting at number 22, it should be one of these two players. If neither player is available, then I could completely justify trading the pick at that point, but I think these two players are definitely worth number 22. Two-way centers I would be looking at. Suns really should be improving their roster with two-way contracts because, I mean, it's one of the cheapest and easiest ways to do it, and you can find all sorts of good talents. I believe Sam Hauser with the Celtics was a two-way contract, so just like finding those guys on two-way deals who turn out to be very valuable players. Vince Williams with the Grizzlies is another name that I'm just like, hey, sign two-way contracts, do it. Austin Reeves, Lou Dort, sign your two-way contracts, man. Don't mess around. Centers like Adem Bona out of UCLA and Fale Dante out of Oregon, Jesse Edwards out of West Virginia are some of the bigger names to monitor. All three of them could go in the second round. Bona might even go first round, but if they end up dropping, the Suns should be on the line trying to get them to sign a two-way contract. 4/5s. This is a shorter list because, you know, there's just not many players who fit the mold. Xavier Tillman, Robert Covington, Jalen Smith, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Jalen Smith, probably the biggest candidate to get a big contract this offseason, but the other three should all be targets. Jeremiah Robinson Earl might be the best available there. Not even really sure what team he's on. I think he's on the Pelicans. So I would try to go after him. He's got kind of a jump shot. He's a pretty nice defender and he's pretty switchable. So I like him. Robert Covington, also perennial player. He's really solid. I would monitor the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they have a somewhat early draft pick in this year's draft, and they might have Dean Wade as an expendable player. I think Dean Wade is such a critical part of how good the Cavs have been. And I think if he's available for trade, you have to go after him. He's such a nice player. He would be less than Nasir Little's contract, so definitely try to trade for him. He would be like maybe the number one trade target I have written down, in my opinion. He's just really nice 3/4/5 that you can add to the team. really nice switchable shooter. Like he's got it. He's got a lot of good things you want out of 4/5. Some drafts 4/5s. I look at Deron Holmes again. He can play 4. He can play 5. He checks the boxes of both of the positions that I've listed. And yeah, I mean, Deron Holmes might be my favorite prospect. Kello Ware, also just a nice guy. He could be a 5 as well, but I listed him 4/5. He can do both. Jonathan Mogbo, Keyshawn Johnson, Enrique Freeman, Oso Ighodaro, Isaac Jones, Jaden Ledee. Just a bunch of names that I would mention in terms of 4/5s. None of them are really great shooters from what I recall. Maybe Enrique Freeman is. I'm not really sure, but all of them kind of bigger body defenders. Some of them are on the smaller side. Mogbo, Keyshawn, who can't really truly play the 5, but definitely keep an eye out for these guys to add in terms of 2A contracts. I think the Suns should be going after them. Big wings, Taurean Prince, maybe the #1 player on this list. It's arguable. All of them are right around the same level of challenge. Chuma, KK, Jay Crowder, Torrey Craig, O'Shea Brissett, Najee Marshall, Lamar Stevens. Some trade targets I would mention are Ousmane Dieng from the Thunder and Jabari Walker from the Trailblazers. Both of them, I think, are on their way out, since those teams are continuing to add more young talents, and they're going to be looking to move on from the guys they've already seen a lot of. Maybe not the best big wings. I think most of these free agents might be better than them, but also a lot of these free agents won't be taking minimum contracts, which are basically all the Suns have to offer. So just keep an eye out for these guys. They got smaller contracts. I think they're both on 1-year deals. So maybe the Suns can swing a trade for either of them. I'm not really sure. Some draft big wings. The #1 guy is Ryan Dunn. He's such a great defender. He doesn't really do much else, but just such a great defender. Like, if you just want a really good defender and you want kind of like a Josh Okogie replacement, I think Ryan Dunn is the guy. Maybe he figures things out offensively long term. Bobby Klintman, I know he's solid. I think he does some good stuff offensively. And Kevin McCullough I don't think was he the defensive player in the nation? He might have been the defensive player of the year for the whole nation in college basketball. I would have to double check that, but he was an amazing defender in college. And some 2A big wings would be like Jalen Bridges, Spencer Jones, Blake Hinson out of Baylor. Spencer Jones is Washington State, and Blake Hinson out of Pitt. Yeah, he's on Pitt. So any of those guys could be solid as well in terms of 2A contracts. And finally, the point guard position. Dennis Smith Jr. is your #1 target. Obviously, he should have been the #1 target last offseason, and definitely did not give him the time of day, considering it took him like 2.5 weeks to get a contract last offseason, I believe. So yeah, DSJ should be the #1 prospect in terms of free agent point guards. He is just such a great defender. He can do stuff off the dribble. He can initiate an offense. He's clearly the #1 guy. Jordan McLaughlin, a little undersized guy, but he's solid. Chris Dunn's a great defender. Spencer Dinwiddie, we know his track record. DeLon Wright, all these guys kind of oversized point guards, and they're all pretty solid. Chris Dunn and DeLon Wright being amazing defenders, potentially even all NBA type defenders, depending on the year, so keep an eye out for them. Trade targets include TJ McConnell from the Pacers, Gabe Vincent from the Lakers, and Trey Mann from the Hornets. These two would, of course, take use of Nurkic's contract to trade for, because they're making more than Nasir Little's making this offseason, so you'd have to trade Nurkic to get either of these guys. I don't know if that's happening, but I would try to keep an eye out if you're at the Suns. Try to get either of those two players if they become available. If they are available, I'm not really sure. And then Trey Mann, yeah, he might be expendable for the Hornets, so keep an eye out there. Draft point guards, your #1 target is absolutely Devin Carter. Such a great defender. He should probably be a lottery talent, but if he ends up dropping, then you want to draft him. Bub Carlton Carrington, he's a bigger point guard. He could be solid. Tyler Kolek, also a bigger point guard. Isaiah Collier. I just made a video of him in the Bronny video. He gets mentioned a ton. Collier, he's a really solid point guard. He's a pretty big body guy who can get through defenders. Some 2-way point guards, AJ Mitchell at UC Santa Barbara, Jamal Shedd out of Houston, KJ Simpson from Colorado, Trey Alexander from Creighton, Bronny James, of course, from USC, teammate to Isaiah Collier, and Tristan Newton out of the NCAA champion UConn should probably be the top 2-way prospect out of those guys, considering A lot of these guys could end up getting drafted. Actually, I'm pretty sure 4 of these 6 guys will get drafted. Probably not KJ or Tristan, but if you want a proven winning player, Tristan Newton is probably a pretty solid two-way contract target for the Suns. I really think that the Suns should be focusing on this draft to fill out their two-way contracts, especially because you could just get rid of their two-way contracts. They're non-guaranteed, so if they have like a bad summer league or they just have a bad experience with the team, okay, you can just, you know, decline their contracts. You can just fire them essentially, and you can move on to a different prospect. But if you're talking just right post-draft, maybe you should just be going right after these rookie-type deals that could end up paying long-term dividends. I'm not really sure who the best prospects are, but I would definitely take my chances with a lot of these two-way guys. And finally, I'm just taking a look at what I want this roster to look like, at least in terms of your like 10-man rotation. This is kind of the goal for the offseason. You want to get your big wing to start at the power forward position, or maybe small forward, depending on how big they are, but you want a guy who can start in place of Royce O'Neal or Grayson Allen, because I think both players are just not tall enough to start. You need a bigger guy out there, and it's got to be a big wing. You want a 5-man, and you want a 4/5-man to fill out your center rotation. It's got to be a new center rotation for the Suns. I would bring back Bol. He's probably the 10th man in this rotation, but we've seen flashes. We've seen how good he could potentially be, so I'd like to see him back in the rotation. And finally, a point guard to back up Beal and Book, who can take the ball out of their hands and help set up plays and help initiate the offense. But yeah, I think that about covers it. There's a lot of stuff for the Suns to do this offseason, but they don't have a lot to work with. Not a whole lot of assets, not a whole lot of money, but they can put in a whole lot of effort, and they probably should put in a whole lot of effort to making this team better, because they need to. You know, they really need to. 5-man, 4/5-man, point guard, big wing, and get rid of Yusuf Nurkic and Nasir Little and all those guys who just don't need to be here. You want to retain these 7 guys, or these 6 guys, add your 4 new players, and fill out the rest with young players or guys you could turn into rotation players, and that would be successful offseason. But that about covers it for this video. Next time you see me talk about the offseason, once we start getting free agents in, it's probably going to be July 10th, I think. So I think it'll be after free agency has already started. So yeah, you gotta wait and see for that one. Kevin Durant, hopefully we'll have some good news in terms of him signing a contract extension. Doesn't mean he's going to be playing the whole contract extension for the Suns, but maybe we'll be seeing that come in as well. That's another priority. Make sure your star is locked down long term, assuming he wants to stay and the Suns want him to stay. But the Suns are in a pretty non-negotiable situation with the big contracts they have in play. Just having traded for Bradley Beal, like, you got to stick with this roster. You can't really change it that much in terms of these core 4 players that you really want to. You can't really trade. Grayson Allen can't be traded until, like, I don't know, like October or something. So not until the offseason's already over. So you're pretty much locked into these 4 guys. And it's just a question of what you do with the rest of the roster. It's got to be a lot of young talent. I really think the Suns should make that 22nd pick, especially if they're drafting a center. I think that's a big deal, because I think that's the easiest position to fill on this roster with the draft pick, and could easily be a starting type of guy. You know, like, say, the Dallas Mavericks found with Derek Lively, who's just really just good enough to be a starter. They should be hunting for a guy like that. But that about covers it. I will see you in the next video. If you haven't subscribed already, maybe scroll down and hit that button. That'd be pretty cool, y'all. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.